First contact protocol failure. The Galactic exploration vessel, Eternal Serenity, hung in high orbit above the blue-green world, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight into rainbow patterns across space. Captain Zixtal of the Luminarian species stood on the bridge, her bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with anticipation as she reviewed the preliminary scans of the uncontacted world below. Fascinating, she hummed, her translator converting the light patterns into standard galactic basic. This species has achieved atomic power but hasn't yet developed proper environmental controls. How do they survive? Her science officer, a methane-breathing chloraction named Vex, floated in his containment sphere beside her. The readings are disturbing, Captain. The planet experiences temperature variations of over 100 degrees in their standard measurement units. There are regions of extreme pressure differentials, toxic atmospheric events they call storms, and regular geological upheavals. Surely they must live in protected habitats. Zixtal's tentacles flickered with concern. Negative, Captain. Initial scans show most of their population centers are exposed to the elements. Many are built directly on geological fault lines or near active volcanic regions. Before Zixtal could respond, her communications officer interrupted. Captain, we're detecting a small vessel approaching from the surface. It appears to be, Captain, this can't be right. It's using chemical propulsion and appears to have minimal shielding. Impossible. Zixtal's whole body flashed with disbelief. No species could survive space travel in such primitive conditions. Initiate emergency rescue protocols immediately. The bridge crew scrambled to action, preparing their most advanced medical and environmental support systems. As the small human craft drew closer, they watched in horror as their sensors confirmed their worst fears. The vessel's occupants were protected by nothing more than thin layers of fabric and primitive pressure seals. The human spacecraft, a routine shuttle mission, had detected the alien vessel and decided to make humanity's first contact. Inside, Commander Sarah Chen and her co-pilot James Rodriguez were excitedly discussing first contact protocols while completely unaware of the panic they were causing. This is Commander Chen of Earth Space Agency Shuttle Discovery, attempting to establish communication with unidentified vessel. We come in peace and welcome you to Earth orbit. The message was simple, broadcast on multiple frequencies. The response they received was not what they expected. Remain calm, primitive vessel. Rescue operations are co-MNE and saying. Please do not ATTMPTANYFURTER movement in your dangerous craft. Chen and Rodriguez exchanged confused looks. Did they just call us primitive? Rodriguez asked, trying not to laugh. Before they could respond, their shuttle was enveloped in a soft purple beam, and they found themselves materializing in what appeared to be a medical quarantine chamber aboard the alien vessel. The room was filled with what looked like expensive medical equipment, and several crystalline beings were rushing around in what appeared to be panic. Please remain still. A translated voice boomed through speakers. We are attempting to stabilize your environmental conditions. How are you still conscious in such inadequate protection? Chen looked down at her standard-issue NASA spacesuit, then at Rodriguez, who shrugged. Our protection is functioning normally, she replied carefully. Our environmental systems are within standard operating parameters. There was a long pause, followed by what sounded like an argument in an alien language consisting of light pulses and crystalline chimes. Your species routinely travels in these conditions, the voice finally asked, sounding horrified. Well, yes, Rodriguez answered. This is actually one of our newer models. You should have seen what we used back in the 1960s. More alien chatter followed, punctuated by what they would later learn were the Luminarian equivalent of gasps and exclamations of disbelief. Captain, Chen ventured, I believe there may be some misunderstanding. While we appreciate your concern, we are perfectly safe in our current equipment. Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss cultural exchange. Meet in person. The horror in the translated voice was unmistakable. You wish to exit your protective equipment. Well, yes, assuming you have a pressurized environment. Our suits can be somewhat cumbersome for diplomatic discussions. What followed was a crash course in human environmental tolerances that left their alien hosts in various states of shock. The humans could survive in temperatures that would freeze or boil most galactic species, pressure variations that would crush or explode others, and radiation levels that should have been instantly lethal. Let me understand this correctly, Captain Zixtal said, her crystalline form vibrating with stress. Your species regularly exists in conditions that would kill most known intelligent life forms, and you consider this normal. Pretty much, Chen replied, now comfortably seated in what she assumed was meant to be an alien medical bed, having removed her spacesuit despite the medical staff's protests. Though we do have our limits, we can't survive in space without protection. For instance, that should go without saying. Vex interjected, his containment sphere wobbling slightly. No species can survive in space without protection. Well, there was this one time during an early space mission where an astronaut's glove leaked, Rodriguez added helpfully. He survived. It wasn't comfortable, but he was interrupted by the sound of several alien medical devices shorting out, overwhelmed by the stress readings from their operators. Over the next few hours, as Chen and Rodriguez answered questions about human capabilities and living conditions, the alien crew's initial panic gradually transformed into a fascinating mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. They learned that what humans considered mild inconveniences were lethal hazards to most species, and what humans viewed as basic survival skills were seen as superhuman abilities by galactic standards. Your entire civilization, Captain Zixtal summarized, her voice containing equal parts awe and fear, has evolved on what should be classified as an extreme death world, yet you not only survive but thrive in conditions that would kill 99.9% of known sentient species. You build cities in death zones, explore space in what amount to primitive pressure vessels, and consider this all perfectly normal. When you put it that way, it does sound a bit intense, Chen admitted. But it's just home to us. Speaking of which, would you like to visit? We could show you around some of our major cities. The entire alien bridge crew simultaneously engaged their emergency environmental shields. Perhaps, Captain Zixtal managed diplomatically, we should start with long-range cultural exchange first. I need to update some reports. Many reports. As Chen and Rodriguez prepared to return to their shuttle, they couldn't help but notice the alien crew treating them with a mixture of terrified respect and fascinated horror. They had a feeling this was just the beginning of humanity's interesting relationship with the galactic community. You know, Rodriguez said as they made their way back to the shuttle, we haven't even told them about extreme sports yet. Chen grinned. Let's save something for the second date. Back on the bridge of the Eternal Serenity, Captain Zixtal was already composing her report to Galactic Command. The header read, URGENT, previously unknown Deathworld species, achieved spaceflight. Immediate reclassification required. She paused, considering the implications of what they'd discovered. Vex, she called to her science officer, begin compiling a comprehensive report on human environmental tolerances and survival capabilities. I have a feeling the Galactic Council is going to need several strong drinks before reading this one. As the Eternal Serenity prepared to depart Earth orbit, its crew couldn't help but look down at the blue-green world below with new eyes. It wasn't just a planet anymore. It was a crucible that had forged one of the most resilient species in known space, and they had a feeling the galaxy would never be quite the same again. The Committee of Species Assessment, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, was designed to accommodate beings from over 10,000 species. Today, it was filled to capacity as representatives gathered for what many considered the most important classification hearing in centuries. The central platform held the Committee of Species Assessment, a diverse group of experts tasked with evaluating newly discovered civilizations. High Arbiter Nexthal, a being composed of pure energy contained within an advanced quantum field, addressed the assembly. We are gathered today to review the classification of species 47,291, designation human, following recent contact reports that suggest our initial assessment may have been inadequate. Holoprojectors activated, displaying the preliminary report from the Eternal Serenity's encounter. Captain Zixtal stood before the committee, her crystalline form still showing signs of stress fractures from her experience. "Honorable Committee," she began, "my crew's encounter with humans has forced us to fundamentally reconsider our understanding of species classification. These beings don't just survive in Deathworld conditions, they actively seek them out." The assembly murmured as she continued. "During our follow-up research, we discovered that humans deliberately build settlements in areas that experience regular geological upheavals, extreme temperature variations, and toxic atmospheric events. They call these cities, and some of their largest have populations in the millions. A Vaporan representative, existing as a sentient cloud of ionized gas, pulsed with skepticism. Surely they must have developed advanced protective technology. "That's what we assumed initially," Zixtal replied. "However, most of their structures are built from processed stone and metal alloys. Many of their dwellings have minimal environmental controls, relying primarily on simple insulation and chemical burning for temperature regulation." The committee members exchanged horrified glances as sensor data from Earth appeared in the holoprojection. Images of human cities built along fault lines, active volcanic regions, and hurricane-prone coastlines filled the display. "But surely, a methane-breathing Chloraction interjected, they at least avoid the most dangerous regions of their death world." Zixtal's crystalline form flickered with what the assembly's translators interpreted as nervous laughter. "Actually, they've turned many of their most lethal environments into what they call tourist destinations. They'd visit these places for entertainment." The holoprojector showed images of humans climbing sheer cliff faces, diving into ocean depths, and skiing down avalanche-prone mountains. Each new image caused more distress among the assembled representatives. "They appear to have developed an entire economic sector around visiting dangerous locations," Zixtal continued. "They call it the adventure tourism industry. Humans will pay significant resources for the privilege of risking their lives in increasingly creative ways." A senior xenobiologist, Dr. Eakes of the silicon-based Lithosians, stepped forward. "The committee has reviewed the biological data, and we find it concerning. Humans demonstrate extreme adaptability to environmental changes that would be lethal to most species. They can survive significant radiation exposure, dramatic pressure changes, and temperature variations that should be instantly fatal." The holoprojector displayed human biological data, highlighting their remarkable healing capabilities and environmental tolerances. "Most disturbingly," Dr. Eakes continued, "they appear to become stronger when exposed to controlled amounts of normally lethal conditions. They deliberately damage their muscle tissue to increase its density, expose themselves to radiation to alter their skin pigmentation, and regularly consume substances that would be classified as toxins by any reasonable standard." "Are you suggesting," High Arbiter Nexthal's energy field fluctuated with concern, "that they intentionally poison themselves?" "Yes, Your Honor," Dr. Eakes replied. "They have entire cultural practices built around the consumption of fermented toxins they call alcohol. They celebrate these practices. They have competitions to determine who can consume the most lethal variants." The assembly erupted in chaos as images of human drinking games appeared on the holoprojector. Several species representatives had to engage their emergency environmental shields just from witnessing the footage. "Order." High Arbiter Nexthal's voice resonated through the chamber. "We must maintain composure. Captain Zixtal, what are your recommendations regarding human classification?" Zixtal's form straightened. "Based on our observations, humans don't merely survive in Deathworld conditions. They actively seek them out and attempt to push their limits further. Their entire civilization is built on the principle of overcoming what they call challenges. They view potentially lethal situations as opportunities for advancement. She paused, her crystalline structure vibrating with tension. Moreover, they are now achieving faster-than-light travel capabilities. Their ships, while primitive by our standards, are remarkably resilient and operated by crews who view the deadly vacuum of space as just another frontier to conquer. You're suggesting the High Arbiter's energy field pulsed with realization that they might spread these tendencies beyond their home system. They already are, Zixtal confirmed. They've established colonies on their system's other Deathworlds, planets we wouldn't even consider approaching without the most advanced environmental protection systems. They're discussing plans to terraform these worlds, not to make them safer, but to make them barely habitable enough for their standards. The committee members conferred briefly, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of light, sound, and energy pulses. Finally, High Arbiter Xthal addressed the assembly. Based on the evidence presented, this committee has no choice but to classify humans as a Class 14 species, the highest threat level on our environmental danger scale. However, the Arbiter's energy field fluctuated thoughtfully. We must note that despite their terrifying capabilities, humans have shown no hostile intent. They appear to be primarily driven by an insatiable curiosity and a seemingly pathological need to explore dangerous situations. A new classification category appeared in the Galactic database, Class 14E. Exploratory. Species demonstrates extreme environmental resilience and actively seeks dangerous conditions. Approach with caution. Note: despite classification, species shows strong tendencies toward peaceful cooperation and scientific exchange. Recommended action: careful diplomatic engagement with extensive safety protocols. As the assembly began to disperse, Dr. Eakes approached Captain Zixtal privately. Captain, you haven't mentioned the most disturbing discovery your crew made during the initial contact. Zixtal's crystalline form dimmed slightly. You mean their response when we explained why we were so concerned about their environmental tolerances? Yes. The fact that they laughed and then asked if we wanted to visit their planet's most dangerous regions for fun. Both aliens stood in silence, contemplating the implications of a species that viewed lethal danger as entertainment. Somewhere on Earth, a human was probably already planning the first extreme tourism package for adventurous alien visitors. The galaxy would never be quite the same. The exchange program incident. Dean Vixthera of the Galactic Central University had faced many challenges in her 300 years of academic administration, but none quite like this. She stared at the report on her quantum display with all four of her optical sensors, trying to process what she was reading. They did what? She asked her assistant for the third time. The human exchange students, her assistant, a young Meridian named Pole whose electromagnetic field rippled with anxiety, repeated, organized what they called a study group in the Volcanic Sciences Department's active simulation chamber, without environmental suits. The Dean's protective field crackled. The chamber that simulates the conditions of a Class 9 volcanic planet. Yes, Dean. They said it reminded them of something called a sauna, and that it helped them concentrate. They brought beverages. The incident was just the latest in a series of events that had thrown the most prestigious academic institution in the galaxy into chaos since the arrival of the first human exchange students 3 standard months ago. The exchange program had been proposed as a way to better understand the newly discovered Class 14E species, but no one had quite anticipated the reality of having humans on campus. The Dean pulled up the full list of incidents on her display. Week 1. Human student Lisa Chen discovered using the zero-gravity research chamber for what she called recreational acrobatics during off hours. When questioned, she submitted a proposal to start a zero-G gymnastics club. Week 2. James O'Connor found swimming in the liquid methane tanks of the Extreme Environment Research Center. Claimed he was testing his limits for his xenobiology thesis. Somehow survived. Week 3. The entire human contingent organized an extreme study session on the external surface of the space station's observation dome. Security footage showed them taking what they called selfies, with the local star system as backdrop. "Have we received any communications from the human academic liaison?" the dean asked hopefully. Pole's field flickered apologetically. "Yes, Dr. Martinez from Earth's United Universities Board responded to our concerns. She said, and I quote, 'Oh yeah, that sounds like typical grad student behavior. At least they're not trying to survive on coffee alone like back on Earth.'" "Coffee?" the dean asked, dreading the answer. "Apparently it's a toxic stimulant humans consume to enhance their cognitive functions. They've been importing it by the crate. Several xenobiologists are demanding research access." Before the dean could respond, her emergency communication channel activated. The holographic form of Professor Zextil, head of the Xenosociology Department, appeared looking even more agitated than usual for a plasma-based life form. "Dean, you must come to the athletic center immediately. The humans, they've started a competition." Minutes later, Dean Vix Thera arrived at the athletic center to find a scene of controlled chaos. A crowd of alien students and faculty had gathered to watch as the human exchange students demonstrated what they called parkour, using the facility's anti-gravity safety systems and environmental barriers as obstacles. "Fascinating adaptation of safety equipment for recreational purposes," Professor Zextil commented, recording the event for his research. "They turned potentially lethal falls into what they call sick moves." The dean watched in horror as Maria Patel, a human quantum physics student, performed a backflip off a Class 10 containment field. "Are they aware those barriers are designed to contain plasma storms?" "Oh yes," the professor replied. "That's apparently part of the appeal. They've started a social media stream. We're trending on something called Space TikTok." The situation had begun to attract attention beyond academic circles. The Galactic Council's Species Integration Committee had sent observers, trying to understand how to incorporate these seemingly indestructible thrill-seekers into galactic society. During one particularly memorable incident, human biology student Tom Chen had caused a panic by taste-testing various safe alien foods, including some that were technically classified as industrial solvents for most species. His resulting paper on human digestive adaptability was now required reading in xenobiology departments across the galaxy. "Dean," Pole interrupted her thoughts, "we've received a new proposal from the human students." "Do I want to know?" "They want to organize an interspecies extreme sports festival. They've already gotten support from the Andromeda Institute and the Cygnus Academy. Apparently, word has spread about their unique approach to recreation." The dean's protective field fluctuated with resignation. "And I suppose they have safety protocols in place." "They submitted a comprehensive plan. It's actually quite impressive. They've accounted for every species' environmental needs and included something called liability waivers, apparently a human legal tradition for dangerous activities." Looking at the proposal, the dean had to admit it was well thought out. The humans had carefully considered the biological limitations of each species and designed events that would be challenging but survivable for all participants. They'd even included cultural exchange elements, proposing to teach other species about human concepts like acceptable risk and holding my beer. "Professor Zextil," she turned to the sociologist, "your professional opinion." The plasma being pulsed thoughtfully. "From a research perspective, it's unprecedented. We're observing human risk assessment and problem-solving behaviors in real time. Plus, their enthusiasm is infectious. Several of my Lithosian students have expressed interest in trying something called rock climbing. Apparently, it's less dangerous for silicon-based life forms." The dean made her decision. Approve the proposal, but with maximum security protocols in place. And, she added, have the medical bay ready. Not for the humans, for everyone else who might try to keep up with them. As she watched the human students celebrate the news by attempting increasingly complex acrobatic maneuvers, Dean Vixthera realized that the exchange program had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, just not in the way they'd anticipated. Instead of humans learning to be more cautious, they were teaching the galaxy to be more adventurous. Later that evening, reviewing the day's events, she added a personal note to her official report to the Galactic Education Board. Perhaps the true value of human integration into galactic society isn't just their remarkable resilience, but their ability to show other species that the impossible might just be a matter of perspective. Though I strongly recommend increasing our insurance coverage. Meanwhile, in the student recreation area, Lisa Chen was teaching a group of fascinated alien students about the human concept of parkour. As she demonstrated a particularly complex movement, she grinned at her audience. "Just wait until we show you skiing. You haven't lived until you've slid down a frozen mountain on purpose." The translator struggled to convey the mixture of horror and excitement in the alien students' responses. The invasion that wasn't. Supreme Commander Krastvul of the Drachnid Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable conquest, reviewing the final invasion plans for the newly discovered Deathworld classified as Earth. His species had built their reputation on conquering worlds that others deemed too dangerous to approach. The more hostile the environment, the more glory in its subjugation. "Status report," he growled, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge's harsh lighting. His chief strategist, Sub-Commander Vexthar, brought up a holographic display of the target planet. "The humans remain unaware of our approach, Supreme Commander. Our stealth systems have kept us hidden behind their primitive satellite network." "Excellent. And our analysis of their defensive capabilities. Minimal by our standards. Their orbital defenses are practically non-existent. They rely primarily on chemical rockets and basic ballistic weapons. However," Vexthar hesitated. "Speak." "There are some concerning reports from our advanced scouts. The Class 14E classification appears to be accurate, but not for the reasons we initially assumed." Krasvul's mandibles clicked dismissively. "We are Drachnids. We have conquered worlds that would instantly kill lesser species. What could possibly concern our scouts about these primitives?" "Sir, I believe you should review this footage personally." The holographic display shifted to show various scenes from Earth. A group of humans running through what the sensors identified as a severely irradiated zone called Chernobyl for entertainment. Another group diving into the depths of something called the Mariana Trench for research. Yet another climbing the highest mountain on the planet. Because, as they put it, it's there. "These can't be their warriors," Krasvul said incredulously. "These must be their elite special forces." "No, sir. These are their tourists, civilians seeking recreation." Before the Supreme Commander could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple small craft approaching from the planet's surface. The sensor operator announced. "Impossible," Krasvul snarled. "Our stealth systems are perfect." "Sir," Vexthar interjected, "they're not military vessels. They appear to be civilian ships." Something called amateur astronomers detected an interesting anomaly in their night sky and decided to investigate. "They're broadcasting on open frequencies, inviting us to chat." The bridge crew watched in horror as the primitive human vessels approached, protected by nothing more than basic pressure suits and what appeared to be minimal radiation shielding. The humans were actively broadcasting greetings and questions about their cool-looking spaceship. "They can't be serious," Krasvul muttered. "No species would approach an unknown vessel in such vulnerable craft. It must be a trick." "Sir, we're receiving more transmissions. Apparently, news of our presence has gone viral. There are now hundreds of civilian craft launching to, quote, check out the aliens." The Supreme Commander's battle-hardened nerves began to fray as he watched humans treating what should have been a terrifying first contact scenario like some sort of festival. They were taking pictures, streaming video, and seemed absolutely unconcerned about the potential dangers. "Launch a warning shot," he ordered. "Show them they're dealing with the mighty Drachnid Empire." A plasma burst shot across the bow of the nearest human vessels. The response was not what anyone expected. "Sir," they're cheering. They're calling it the best light show ever and requesting an encore. Several vessels are moving closer for better camera angles. Krasthul's exoskeleton creaked as he gripped his command chair. "Fine. Begin the invasion sequence. Deploy the environmental warfare units." The Drachnid Empire had conquered dozens of worlds by making them too hostile for the native species to survive. Their environmental warfare units could turn atmospheres toxic, raise temperatures to unbearable levels, and create conditions that would break the will of any resistance. The units deployed, targeting Earth's major population centers. Reports began flooding in. "Sir, we've raised the temperature in their Death Valley region by 30 degrees. Humans are organizing something called a scientific expedition to study the phenomenon. We've increased atmospheric pressure in their Mariana Trench research stations. They're calling it exciting new diving conditions and requesting more funding for extreme environment research. The toxic gas release in their New York metropolis. They're complaining that it's just like regular Tuesday traffic and continuing their daily routines." As the reports continued, Krasthul's mighty empire faced an enemy it had never encountered before, a species that not only survived in Deathworld conditions, but seemed to thrive on new challenges. The humans weren't fighting back. They were adapting, studying, and in many cases, appearing to enjoy the changes. "Sir," Vexthar reported, his voice strained, "we're receiving a transmission from their global communication network. Apparently, our environmental attacks have sparked something called extreme tourism. They're selling tickets." The Supreme Commander watched as humans began organizing expeditions into the areas his forces had made most hostile. They were treating it like some sort of adventure sport, competing to see who could spend the most time in the altered environments. "These creatures," he muttered, "they're insane. We're trying to make their world uninhabitable, and they're turning it into an entertainment venue." The final blow to the invasion plans came when human scientists began broadcasting detailed analysis of the Drachnid environmental warfare technology. They weren't just surviving it. They were studying it, improving it, and discussing potential peaceful applications. "Sir," a communications officer reported, "we're receiving an official transmission from their United Earth government. They're thanking us for the fascinating research opportunities and offering to establish diplomatic relations. They're also requesting permission to study our environmental modification technology for something called Terraform Mars Faster." Krasthul, Supreme Commander of the mighty Drachnid Empire, conqueror of Deathworlds, terror of the galaxy, did something he had never done in his centuries of military service. He ordered a retreat. As the inevitable conquest prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Vexthar approached his commander. "Sir, what should I put in the official report?" Krasthul stared at the blue-green world growing smaller on their view screen. Tell them we've discovered something worse than a death world. We've found a world where the inhabitants look at certain death and ask it out for coffee." Years later, the attempted invasion of Earth became a cautionary tale in Drachnid military academies, not of the dangers of underestimating an enemy's weapons or defenses, but of the futility of trying to intimidate a species that treats lethal conditions as a tourist attraction. Meanwhile, on Earth, the incident sparked a new field of study in sino-environmental adaptation, several extreme sports leagues, and a reality TV show called Surviving Alien Environments. The show's ratings were particularly high among the Drachnid population, who watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as humans casually navigated conditions that their military had considered weapons of war. The Drachnid Empire never attempted another invasion of Earth. They did, however, end up establishing a profitable tourism industry, charging thrill-seeking humans to visit their most dangerous worlds. As one Drachnid tourism operator put it, "If you can't beat them, charge them admission." Guardians of the Deathworlds. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called with unprecedented urgency. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber, their various environmental bubbles and protective fields creating a shimmer of defensive technologies across the room. At the center of the chamber stood Admiral Sarah Chen, Earth's representative to the Galactic Defense Force, looking remarkably unprotected in her simple dress uniform. High Counselor Zixtal, descended from the captain who had first contacted humanity, addressed the assembly. We face a crisis unprecedented in galactic history. The void plague has begun consuming inhabited worlds, turning them into death worlds that none of our species can approach. None except. All eyes, optical sensors, and sensory apparatus turned toward Admiral Chen. You want us to be your cleanup crew, Chen stated matter-of-factly, a slight smile playing at her lips. We prefer the term ecological intervention specialists, a Vaporend representative suggested hopefully. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the spread of the void plague across the galaxy. The biological weapon, accidentally released from an ancient research facility, was transforming planets into nightmarish versions of themselves. Atmospheres turned toxic, temperatures soared, radiation levels spiked, conditions that would kill most galactic citizens instantly. Conditions that humans called Tuesday. Let me get this straight, Chen said, pacing the platform. You want humanity to establish a specialized force to handle extreme environmental disasters, explore deadly planets, and basically deal with anything too dangerous for other species to handle. That is correct, High Counselor Zixtal admitted. Your species' unique capabilities make you ideally suited for such tasks. Chen's smile widened. We accept, on one condition. The council chamber erupted in murmurs as Chen continued. We don't want to just clean up your messes. We want to teach other species how to handle these situations themselves. We'll establish the Galactic Extreme Environment Response and Training Division, GEERD for short. You want to train other species to enter death worlds? A Chloraxian representative asked, their containment sphere wobbling with anxiety. Exactly. Humanity has learned a lot about surviving in hostile environments. It's time we shared that knowledge. With proper training and equipment, many of your species could handle conditions you currently think impossible. The following months saw the rapid establishment of GERD facilities across the galaxy. Human instructors, drawing from military, scientific, and extreme sports backgrounds, began training alien species in the art of survival in hostile environments. At the GERD Academy on Mars, chosen for its beginner-friendly conditions, instructor Jack O'Connor watched his first class of alien trainees prepare for their environmental endurance test. Remember, he called out to the nervous group, your environmental suits are top-of-the-line human design. They can handle conditions far worse than this. Trust your equipment, trust your training, and most importantly, trust yourselves. The class included representatives from 20 different species, each chosen for their potential adaptability. They were about to experience their first taste of what humans called moderate environmental hazards. This is just like the simulations, a young Lithosian crystalline being said, trying to convince himself. Just like the simulations. Actually, O'Connor grinned, it's way more fun. This is real Martian dust you're about to experience. Real low atmospheric pressure, real radiation. And you're all going to handle it beautifully. To everyone's surprise, he was right. Under human guidance, species that had never dreamed of leaving their environmental bubbles were learning to operate in conditions their ancestors would have considered certain death. The human approach to challenge, face it, study it, adapt to it, and eventually master it, was proving surprisingly transferable. Meanwhile, the first GEERD response teams were deploying to void plague-affected worlds. Mixed species crews, led by human veterans, began the dangerous work of reclaiming worlds thought lost forever. On Proxima VI, a team led by Commander Maria Patel, formerly of the infamous Galactic University Exchange Program, had just successfully neutralized a particularly nasty void plague outbreak. As her mixed crew celebrated in their respective environmental suits, she received a priority communication from Earth. "Commander, Admiral Chen's holographic form appeared. Congratulations on Proxima VI. But we've got a bigger situation developing. We've detected what appears to be an ancient alien megastructure in the heart of the Carina Nebula. It's surrounded by radiation levels that would kill most species instantly." Patil's eyes lit up. "Sounds like fun. What's the catch?" "The catch is that it's actively doing something to nearby stars, and we need to figure out what before it causes a chain reaction. Oh, and the entire structure appears to be maintained at temperatures approaching plasma state. So, Tuesday. Pretty much. But here's the interesting part. We've got volunteers from 12 different species wanting to join the mission. Your training programs are paying off. These aren't just humans looking for the next big thrill anymore. The galaxy is learning to face its fears." Patil looked at her crew. Humans, aliens, all of them now veterans of conditions that would have been considered unsurvivable just a year ago. "Send them up. The more the merrier. Just remind them to pack their sunscreen. Plasma-level radiation can be hell on the complexion." As humanity's influence spread throughout the galaxy, something unexpected happened. The definition of Deathworld began to change. Planets that had once been marked as absolutely forbidden were now classified as challenging but manageable with proper training. Species that had evolved in the most sheltered environments were venturing out, protected by human-designed equipment and emboldened by human-taught techniques. The galaxy was changing, becoming braver, more resilient. And at the heart of this transformation were the humans, the crazy species that looked at certain death and saw an opportunity for adventure. In the Galactic Council chamber, a new plaque was installed, bearing words that would become famous throughout civilized space. "To the humans of Earth, who taught us that the only truly deadly environment is the one we're too afraid to explore, may we never stop learning from their courage, their curiosity, and their slightly insane optimism." Below it, someone, presumably a human, had added a small note. "Hold my beer, I'm going in. The galaxy would never be the same. It would be better."